The stars above the desolate moon of Krylos. 7 burned cold and distant, their light barely piercing the thick, swirling atmosphere. The surface was a barren wasteland of jagged rocks and deep crevices, a place where no one ventured unless they had no other choice. It was here, amidst the silence and shadows, that a lone figure stirred. Her name was Zynara, a young alien girl of the Keloth species. Her once vibrant blue skin was now pale and bruised, her delicate bioluminescent markings flickering weakly. Her long, tendril-like hair clung to her face, matted with dirt and dried blood. She had been abandoned here, left to die by her own people. The Keloth were a proud and ancient race, known for their strict adherence to tradition and their disdain for weakness. Zynara had been deemed unfit, a burden. Her crime, a genetic defect that made her physically weaker than the others. When their ship had landed on Krylos 7 for repairs, they had cast her out, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a single broken communicator. Zynara dragged herself across the rocky terrain, her breath shallow and labored. Her leg was badly injured, a deep gash running from her thigh to her knee. Every movement sent waves of pain through her body, but she refused to give up. She had heard stories of humans, reckless, unpredictable creatures who often ventured into the far reaches of space. If she could just find one, perhaps they would help her. But hope was a fragile thing, and it was fading fast. Captain Elias Grant adjusted the settings on his environmental suit as he stepped out of his small exploration vessel, the Starblade. Krylos 7 was not on any official maps, but Elias had always been drawn to the unknown. He was a scavenger, a trader, and occasionally a smuggler. This moon, with its reputation for being uninhabited and worthless, seemed like the perfect place to find something others had overlooked. He moved cautiously, his boots crunching against the rocky ground. The air was thin, and the atmosphere was filled with a faint, acrid smell. His scanner beeped softly, picking up faint traces of metal and organic matter. Elias frowned. This moon was supposed to be empty. As he rounded a large outcropping of rocks, he froze. There, lying in a crumpled heap, was a figure. At first, he thought it was a human, but as he approached, he realized it was something else entirely. An alien. Elias had seen aliens before, traded with them, fought with them, even drank with a few. But this one was different. She was small, delicate, and clearly injured. Her skin was a pale blue, and her hair seemed to move faintly, as if alive. She looked up at him with wide, luminous eyes, filled with pain and desperation. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Then, the alien girl whispered something in a language Elias couldn't understand. Her voice was soft, melodic, but tinged with fear. Elias knelt beside her, his instincts kicking in. He wasn't a hero. He'd be the first to admit that, but he wasn't heartless either. He reached into his pack and pulled out a med kit, carefully examining her injuries. "You're in bad shape," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "But don't worry. I've got you." Zynara watched the human with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had never seen one up close before. His face was rough, with stubble covering his jaw, and his eyes were a deep, piercing green. He moved with a confidence that both intimidated and reassured her. When he touched her leg to clean the wound, she flinched, but he spoke softly, his tone calming. She didn't understand his words, but the intent was clear. He was trying to help her. As he worked, Zynara felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't just the pain fading, it was something deeper. For the first time in her life, someone was treating her with kindness. When Elias finished bandaging her leg, he sat back and studied her. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked, though he knew she couldn't understand him. Zynara tilted her head, her tendril-like hair swaying slightly. She reached out and touched his hand, her fingers trembling. "Thank you," she said in her own language. Elias smiled faintly. "You're welcome." Over the next few days, Elias worked tirelessly to nurse Zynara back to health. He shared his rations with her, though he wasn't sure what her species could eat. To his relief, she seemed to tolerate the food well enough. He also fashioned a makeshift crutch for her, allowing her to move around the small camp he had set up. Despite the language barrier, they found ways to communicate. Zynara pointed to objects and said their names in her language, and Elias repeated them in his. It was slow going, but they managed. One evening, as they sat by the campfire, Zynara gestured to the stars above. "Keeloth," she said, pointing to a distant constellation. Elias followed her gaze. "Home," he guessed. She nodded, her expression sad. "Home," Elias sighed. He had no idea how she had ended up here, but it was clear she didn't belong. "I'll get you back," he promised, though he wasn't sure how. Zynara looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. She didn't need to understand his words to know what he meant. The journey back to civilization was fraught with danger. Krylos 7 was a harsh and unforgiving place, and Elias's ship was barely spaceworthy. But they pressed on, driven by a shared determination. Along the way, they encountered numerous challenges: violent storms, treacherous terrain, and even a run-in with a pack of predatory creatures. Through it all, they relied on each other. Zynara's knowledge of the moon's geography proved invaluable, and Elias's resourcefulness kept them alive. As they grew closer to their destination, Zynara began to open up more. She mimed her story, showing how she had been cast out by her people. Elias watched, his heart aching for her. He couldn't imagine being abandoned like that. "They don't deserve you," he said firmly. "You're stronger than they'll ever know." Zynara smiled faintly, though she didn't fully understand. She could feel the sincerity in his words, and that was enough. When they finally reached a trading outpost on the edge of civilized space, Elias knew it was time to say goodbye. He had done all he could for Zynara, but their paths were destined to diverge. "You'll be safe here," he told her, gesturing to the bustling station. "There are people who can help you." Zynara looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She reached out and touched his face, her fingers trembling. "Elias," she said softly, the first time she had spoken his name. He smiled, though it was bittersweet. "Take care of yourself, Zynara." As she turned to leave, Zynara felt a pang of sadness. She had lost her home, but she had found something even more precious: a friend. Years later, Elias sat in the cockpit of his ship, staring out at the stars. He had never forgotten Zynara, though he had no way of knowing what had become of her. As he prepared to jump to hyperspace, a message came through on his comms. It was a transmission from a distant system, one he didn't recognize. Curious, he opened it. The screen flickered to life, and there she was, Zynara. Her skin was vibrant, her markings glowing brightly. She smiled, and though her words were in her own language, the translation software on his ship provided subtitles. "Elias," she said, "I found a new home. And it's all thanks to you."